start the show. I forgot. just listening to the music.
We're dancing.
I think that's always quite a good bit of music there. John Higgins, lovely to see you again, John.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So what are we talking about today, John?
Well, I thought as part of a series of talks about craft, because we've talked about films and stuff like that. So I thought today we'd start off with stunt work.
Yeah.
And one of my good friends, Hai Lee, who I know in the industry, he's actually a stuntman and he's worked on the new Tom Hardy film, Havoc.
Is that the gangster thing? I saw it the other day.
Yeah, it's a brand new one. But he's worked on, he's a qualified stuntman and he's done quite a few things over the years. And when I was studying acting in the late 90s, a guy called Tay Brandon was actually one of the gunmen on the Lara Croft film. And apparently he actually was in the dressing room with Angelina Jolie. So he was doing those little sequences, where you've got people shooting and, the gunplay. But it's very interesting. I mean, we're going to talk initially about the requirements for stunt work. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of my favorite sequences. And, and then we'll talk a little bit about the tragedies. Of course, we've had the Helena Hutchins tragedy, which is an ongoing thing with Alec Baldwin, the accidental killing of a cinematographer.
Was she the one that, what's her name?
Helena Hutchins.
Who's she?
She's a cinematographer.
Oh, she's the one that got killed.
On Rust. And of course, Alec Baldwin is a producer. There's been a major debate.
Okay.
I actually did an interview with Alia Alperina, who worked with her on her last short film, I Am Normal. And I actually touched on it. You can see the thing on YouTube. And I asked her, I said, well, what was so special about it? She said, well, they were both immigrants. They both came to America at the same time.
Where was she from?
Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
I think Ukraine, yeah.
Did somebody else get hit by the bullet as well?
I'm not.
I think it went off and hit somebody else.
I mean, the thing about it is there's a chain of command. I mean, normally on a thing like this, and as you'll discover in our chats, there's a lot of disciplines. There's armory experts and people. So the thing is, there's a chain of command. So what it is the person who handed the gun to Alec Baldwin, I think, was charged as well.
Yeah.
Because she didn't check the chamber. And then all of a sudden, it's really crazy.
But why would any stunt gun, have a bullet in it, a live bullet? Like, it's not like I was out shooting with it at the weekend.
No, but they didn't check the barrel.
But why was there ever a bullet in there?
Apparently, they were going off and doing shooting.
That's mental. That is mental. So they're using it for shooting rather than locking that thing up at the end of a shoot.
Apparently, because normally they do separate. They're supposed to sort of compartmentalize and separate them, just so that they have the.
This is a gun for a film set.
Yeah, this is the film.
And they've got it. And they say, "Can you check?" What they should be doing is checking the gun. Now, later on, we're going to be talking about Brandon Lee and the Crow. Which I think, but that will come at the end.
Okay, so go on.
So we're going to kick off now. First of all, what do you think? This is for everybody. What do you think are the main requirements to be stunt work today? Now, this is from the British Stunt Register.
Yeah. You're good at keeping quiet.
I was going to say a proof of work, being able to work within the country.
No, there are 6 disciplines that you have to bear in mind. There are 6 groups. This is actually from the actual thing. What you've got to think about is when you watch a movie and you see all the things, what do you think are the mandatory requirements if you're going to be a stuntman?
Don't know. I mean, you've got to have some sort of background in sports or something.
In a way, because Vic Armstrong and Yaki McCanut, who's the legendary stuntman, he was a rodeo, and Vic Armstrong was a horse rider before he became a stuntman.
Right.
Legend has it, he's the very first ninja who slides down a rope in You Only Live Twice.
Oh, right.
Okay.
So the actual requirements you have to be a stuntman?
Yes, so I will tell you now, there's 6 groups. So Group A is fighting.
Right.
Which is, standard fighting, which I suppose that. Group B is falling.
But how can you say I'm a good, I've got a qualification?
Well, okay, so... Okay,
I have a lot of experience.
Okay, so...
I'm very unbalanced.
So if you think about a movie where somebody gets pushed off the top of a cliff...
Yeah.
And they fall in there. So obviously they've got, If you watch Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon 3, when he's in that thing, there's a guy who falls.
Yeah.
And he's falling backwards. And what they're doing is they're coordinating their body. Like Dar Robinson, who there's a scene in Lethal Weapon towards the end, where they've just escaped from the club. And, Mel Gibson shoots up in the air. And then this guy falls. That's a fall. So it's maybe a cable or something like that. Group C is riding and driving, so that's horses and cars. So if you think of the big car chases in any number of the Bond movies or Mission Impossible, you think of that motorcycle chase in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation where Rebecca Ferguson is riding the bike in the deserts and Cruise is riding, no helmet, 300 miles an hour, and you're actually watching him go down at speed. It's extraordinary.
Right,
I mean, this, you know,
insurance.
No, but the thing is, Cruise. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for the latest Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. There's a biplane chase, and he's hanging on, and he's like, for example, he's doing an underwater sequence in a submarine, and apparently he's learned to control his breathing. And one of the things he's actually said that he's Kate Winslet's held her breath for like 7 or 8 minutes.
Bloody hell!
So. It's things like there's also strength and agility.
Yeah.
Water we've just talked about. So things like swimming. There's also an exceptional one. So there's miscellaneous disciplines. So my challenge to anybody here is when you're watching it is next time you watch a film which has a stunt in, have a look at the breakdown. See whether I can do it. I mean, the next question I'm going to ask you is, you may want to be James Bond, but could you do it given the actual physical challenges?
Right.
No.
You can probably fall over if you want. You can fall.
Yeah,
but it's the getting up bit.
I was going to say, it's getting back up. My knees aren't so good. Depends what the ground's like.
I'll fall for money.
Yeah, my hands hurt.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's actually, the funny thing is I've picked some interesting examples. So, for example, Casino Royale has 2 immensely well-made and constructed stunt
Is that Craig David?
No,
Craig David.
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig, yeah.
Well, he did.
Yeah.
He sort of saved the world in 7 days.
Right, okay.
I had to do that. So in Casino Royale, there's 2 sequences. There's a free-running sequence on a crane.
Yeah.
Now, I watched that sequence, and I just think the fact is it goes up, it goes down, it goes sliding. There's falling off buildings. There's a fight on a crane.
Lots of wide shots.
Shots as well.
Everyone running.
And the thing is like, you physically see somebody leap from one crane to another. You see the stuntman leap down. So of course you have the close-ups of Daniel Craig and Sebastian Fuson, who was the thing, and they're doing the punch-up. But that's actually a close-up. But then they cleverly intercut it with a wide angle or an aerial shot, and then of course it just cuts to it, and then it goes from the crane, and then there's a chase on the he gets on a van. Craig leaps onto a van, then he leaps into the compound, the embassy, and he shoots it. And there's all this gunplay, and there's physical shoots, and then he blows up a tank, and he shoots. I think if you think about it, there's so much elements going into it, and then you think, well, how they must plan it, and they've got to do it. You've got a stunt coordinator, which was Greg Powell saying, well, doing it that, but they're doing it in such a way that's responsible. That's the thing, is that they must have planned ages trying to say, and on the day, it's like, if you take the opening pre-credit sequence of GoldenEye, when the bungee jump, where Pierce Brosnan bungee jump, it's at the top of a dam, but they had to test to see whether the wind was going to carry him into the wall. So they actually used to throw balloons off to make sure, water balloons, to make sure that it wasn't going in. And when they tested it, that was it. So that's something to remember. I mean, another example is Mad Max 2.
Yes.
There's 2 sequences in that. There's when Max is taking the truck and he's bringing the truck back to the compound. There's this incredible chase, and people are on. There's camera angles where there's one camera which is in the car as a car is coming up and bashing the actual thing. You've got like the craziness of it. There's a scene where the gyro captain chucks a snake into the back of a thing, and the car just twists around and he shoots, and then leaps over and hits the thing, and then you physically see the body go boom like that, pirouette back. And then the climax. I mean, the immense power of it. It's all in camera. There's no CGI. There's no stunts, but it's amazing what they've done. And in the first film, Mad Max, there's a scene where Max sort of hits a bunch of bikers, and there's a scene where a bike goes in slow motion, rolls over, and then hits the guy in the back of the thing.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So I was watching a documentary called The Madness of Max, and what the guy said, because the guy wasn't injured, he said the funny thing is what I did was I relaxed at the point of contact.
Right, yeah.
And it so leans over. So in reality, he didn't end up with it. But
I heard the police officer told me this. He said when there's a car crash, he said when there's less damage when the person's drunk because they're relaxed.
Yeah.
So,
Whereas because they don't push and lock everything out.
That's what they talked about with the stuntman who doubled for Jason Miller in The Exorcist, the climactic thing where the guy fell down.
Oh yeah.
And he said that they had all the boxes on there, but he said, and Jason Miller said to him, well, how did you do that? He said,
When he falls down the stairs.
When he falls down the stairs, he said, well, it's just simple acknowledgement and relaxation.
Right.
When he was rolling, he was rolling.
Don't tense.
And then, of course, the actual Tom Birmingham, who was the actual priest who gave the last rites. I mean, William Friedkin slapped him in the face to get the right reaction.
Right,
because he said, "Do you trust me? Do you trust me?" Go, boom, now act.
I'd just be like, no, you're a lunatic.
Yeah, in the scene, the guy's doing this, shaking.
It's absolutely amazing.
So the next example, this is well documented, is the subway car chase in The French Connection.
I haven't seen it. But
Which is, okay, so The French Connection starred the late Gene Hackman, who, of course, we found...
Police drama.
The police drama. Yeah. It was based on a real-life case. And basically, the story was essentially a major drug bust in the 60s.
Yeah, it was the biggest of all time at the time.
But William Friedkin decided that he needed a chase because a lot of the procedure stuff was very boring. So he created that chase. And they improvised it. And they did it without permission. But so the story goes, he actually sort of bribed the head of the New York Transit Authority and says... can we shoot on it? He says, no, because if I allow you to do it, I'm going to get fired. So basically, he got $40,000 and a one-way trip to Jamaica and lived his life. There's a great interview with between William Friedkin and Christopher McQuarrie talking about that. There's a few, you can read about all this. There's some interesting things.
Hang on, a one-way ticket. So he did it knowing I will be sacked.
No,
for
but
this.
he said, I will let you film it, but if I get sacked, I want the proviso. So, they said they didn't have in the budget, so he got what he.
So if you get sacked, we will just send you off.
But there's some interesting things in there where at one point there's things that literally there's a collision between Gene Hackman's car and this truck, and that was real. And so there was a lot of things, and then the very climactic thing where the train crashes, that was done in reverse. They reversed the track. So what they did was I saw this on a documentary a few years ago, which was called That's Hollywood, and they actually showed it. So what they did was they just reversed the camera in slow motion, then printed it backwards, and of course speed, and then you suddenly see it go right up to the actual bump, the actual
end bit, whatever.
End bit, yeah. And then it cuts to like the thing like that. So it's. I'm always amazed. The more I watch these things, you're thinking, that is bloody awful. And of course, they're riding the thing on the, the cars driving on the pavement and zooming and stuff. And then they mounted a camera on the front of the car, which was done by Owen. There was a guy called Bill Hickman who doubled for Steve McQueen in Bullet, and he drove for 10 blocks at speed. And William Friedkin, so the legend says, I don't think it's fast. He says, listen, get in. And he drove at speed, and he said he never forgave him.
Just hope this.
But, I mean, following on from that, I mean, the car chase in Bullet, which I think is more coordinated because you see there's obvious mistakes. So in Bullet, they've clearly got cameras at different angles. But at several occasions, you see this Volkswagen there's a green Volkswagen that appears in different shots, and you kind of know because the scene's going so fast, you suddenly see like the inside exterior of the car and stuff. But there's not as much kind of obstacles compared to the French Connection chase because it's actually quite done at speed. But it's still a great chase. But and then it climaxes with the car going into a petrol station, and the thing explodes and stuff. But those things are just literally those things are always things to remember, is because as film viewers, we think, oh, great. But if we're buying into the story, ultimately, how relevant is a stunt to the story? Because if you look at Bond, for example, you think, oh, great, this is another Bond movie, it's a Bond. Also, and there's stunts like that, but it's done with specifics, like. In Bond, he's chasing a bomb maker because it might lead to potentially unlocking what's happening.
But it's furthering the plot.
Yes.
Like it's not just like, oh well. I love the car chase in French Connection, but it's not like, okay, well, we're about half an hour and we need someone to get shot, basically, or like your horror movie where they go, oh, okay, it's been 10 minutes, no one's got killed, just pick someone around to kill them off. We need some blood. Yeah,
but there's a valid reason for that sequence because Nicoli, who's the assassin, has just tried to assassinate Doyle, and he attempts to kill him at his house, and then he runs to the subway. Then it goes into the sequence. Then, of course, he gets shot on the stairwell at the end, which is the most famous shot. The poster is the guy like this getting shot. But it's all relevant to the plot. So anybody out there, when you're watching any sequence, think about the relevance of what this sequence is. Bond sequences Bond action sequences happen for a reason. They're relevant to the plot. There's always something in there anyway.
But yeah, I think we all got a bit tired of the third act of any superhero movie, for instance, when it's just it can be quite good up till then, and then it comes to the last battle, and you go, I might as well pop the kettle on, to be honest, because this is going to go on for 20 minutes.
Nobody's going to get hurt, bounce off
everything
each other.
blowing up, and you're like, okay, this is good, looks good, but I'm completely not invested in in what's happening. There's no physicality to it. I don't really know what's going on. It's just bells and whistles.
I mean, I was another example I brought up is the climax of Titanic. The actual climax, which was the physical bow, the actual real life Titanic, which they erected in Baja, Mexico.
Yeah.
Rosarita Studios, which was actually a studio which was actually constructed and built for Titanic and is now a working thing. So what they did, they had a hydraulic that raised up, and then they had all this. And so when you watch it, you're actually physically seeing people slide down. You've got people leaping down, and you've got people hitting the thing. So of course it's coordinated with model shots and CGI and stuff, but the actual physical element of it. And then if you take into account that that's actually what part of the budget went on. It was the most expensive film in 200 million at the time. But when you watch it now, you think, well, actually, that's, because creating the authenticity of the Titanic and then, have this thing.
Yeah, because it's model CG. There is a physicality. And some of those, a lot of those, not a lot, some of those big 90s effects films still hold up a bit because they still have that practical effects. They still have a lot of practical effects in them. Starship Troopers, Terminator 2, Jurassic Park, Titanic. But they augment that with a bit of CG. But they don't overdo. They're not overly reliant.
Those
on
people sliding around, they're probably stunt people, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I would also cite Jackie Chan and John Woo. I mean, Jackie Chan, I saw.
He's another level.
Yeah.
But that's
So I went to National Cinema Day in '96, and I went on a Friday evening, went to the Odeon Leicester Square where you could have it was ticket for £1. It was the weekend of National Cinema weekend, and I watched Rumble in the Bronx.
Oh, the original Jackie Chan.
Which is like, when you watch it, it's like there's a sequence where he actually leaps from a car park and leaps onto the thing, and you physically see him do it. And at the end of the film, they have all the physical bloopers. And then you watch him, like, there's a scene where he sort of leapt onto the hovercraft, and you see him actually kneecap his thing, and then of course it shows him like he's got like his leg broken.
He broke. I think it wasn't in that jump between the buildings. He broke both his heels. I think. Yeah.
Jeez.
And again, he was out for like a month.
And then, of course, there's that incredible slide down that curtain in Rush Hour. The one where he's... And the thing about it is I think apparently he's said that he's broken every single bone in his body.
I could believe that, to be honest.
But but what it is that was from his training at the Peking Opera Company.
Right.
Which is when you go in there, you're about 8 years old, and you're sort of
Sammo Hung and all that went through.
Sammo Hung and I think Bruce Lee did it as well.
And they bend you every way possible.
But the funny thing is that I think for 5 minutes you're sort of getting cookies and treated like well, and then all of a sudden now I go to discipline you.
Yeah.
But I mean, Michelle Yeoh, for example, did, I saw her in the film Super Cop, and she does this bike ride on a thing. And then if you watch her in Tomorrow Never Dies, she's actually doing a lot of really, there's a wonderful fight sequence towards the end of Tomorrow Never Dies where Pierce Brosnan in the computer and she's sleeping. And you watch her, you kind of watch her physicality in terms of how they coordinate the stunts like that. If you look at John Woo, for example, there's the film Hard Boiled, which is probably his best Hong Kong movie. There's a sequence set in a Chinese restaurant. The amount of gunplay in there, people have gone, and he's sliding down banisters, shooting stuff, the coordination of the camera work, immense. And then the climax is in a hospital where there's bombs underneath the thing. So
there's like a 2.5 minute continuous.
I think I remember just a one shot, jumping up on,
and everyone, and it's just right behind.
And then he brought that to things like Broken Arrow, the John Travolta, Christian Slater thing. At the very end of it, there's a scene on a thing, and there's a helicopter that goes down, and he sort of shoots somebody on there, and then there's another thing where they use the rotor blade of a thing to. Samantha Massey kicks this rotor blade and actually gets the guy off, and then he punches it and stuff. And then there's a scene where Christian Slater severs all the fuel grates, and the thing explodes. The helicopter explodes when they try to take it off.
Or I mean, Face Off ends with a speedboat chase.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, the
It's
climb,
great.
no, but the first 20 minutes of that movie is like a movie in itself. The airport sequence, and you got like when he drives and it goes into that hangar and like there's explosions and there's like, you know,
it's completely over the top. It's wonderful. They honestly, they don't make films like that, but they really don't.
Health and safety.
Like Con Air and stuff. They just like fun, stupid.
Yeah.
Action
I mean, the
films.
last example, there's two final examples. One of them is the pre-credit sequence from The Spy Love Me, which is the parachute jump, which was shot in Baffin Island. Rick Sylvester, who was this mountain climber, he actually they did a sequence where he was escaping from things, leapt off, and then of course the Union Jack comes up and the James Bond thing. But they went to a place called Baffin Island, and John Glenn, who was the second unit director, who then went on to direct some of the Bond movies from For Your Eyes Only. They apparently had to disassemble the helicopter at the top of the mountain, then reassemble it so they could actually get out, so they could film the actual sequence. And
anything with helicopters, having done a bit of reading,
But when they leap off, I mean, people have pointed this out. If you watch the sequence, when the parachute opens, one of the skis actually hits the top of the parachute and bounces off and could have switched off like that. Okay. And then the final example is a film from 1978, which you might have seen, called Hooper. Burt Reynolds.
It's a Stuntman or something.
This was made in 1978, directed by Hal Needham, who'd just done Smokey and the Bandit with Reynolds the previous year. He also did the Cannonball Run with Roger Moore playing Seymour Goldfarb Jr. trying to be Roger Moore. But in that movie, at the end of the film, there's a sequence there's an earthquake, and it's in this area where there's lots of stunts, and it's the most phenomenal sequence. I think somebody's uploaded it on YouTube, but if you watch the Hooper climax, there's a rocket car that goes over a bridge and stuff. But the actual thing is, there's a wonderful thing where these kind of gas towers, the power towers, and you see this car go right, this like Porsche go right on it. It just misses it, and the thing goes down. There's tankers going into buildings, lots of explosions, and there's multiple cameras. But there's an incredible amount of of stunt work in that. And that's the thing. It's like, if when you watch things like Smokey and the Bandit, there's a lot of those cars being deliberately done for the sake of comedic thing, but it is dangerous.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It is dangerous. So yeah, those are just some of the ones that I wanted to point out. So in terms of honoring the stuntman, there's a guy called Yakima Canutt who he worked with John Wayne, and a lot of the stuntman technology that he used today, like the fake punches and actually the roles and stuff like that. But he was honored with an Academy Honorary Reward in 1967 for achievements as a stuntman and for developing safety devices to protect all stuntmen. He got a special citation because he co-directed the chariot race in Ben-Hur in 1959, which is the famous one which is the Charlton Heston film, which is one of the most famous ones that he did.
Did the Academy often give out awards for stunt people?
That's the problem. The problem is that they don't, unlike casting, there's been a lobbying over years because they feel that stuntmen should be given that. Yeah. Vic Armstrong, for example, did get an honorary Academy Award, but that's the problem. They'll get honorary Academy Awards. Oh, right. And it's a difficult one to call because they have he got a tribute in 1978, and he also directed the second unit on Where Eagles Dare. So this is the other thing now. A lot of these legendary stunt men became second unit things. So Vic Armstrong, who was doubling for Harrison Ford on Raiders of the Lost Ark, and actually he saved Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom because Harrison Ford did his back at the time. So a lot of some of the long shots are actually Vic Armstrong doing the stuff, and then when Harrison Ford Harrison Ford came back, so he actually kept the production going, and he's worked with people like Pierce Brosnan. He's got a daughter who's worked on The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. He did second unit on Total Recall. So he did all the stuff. He did he worked with Stallone on Rambo 3. As I say, there's a very funny story in his biography about the fact that when he first arrived on the set of Raiders in Tunisia,
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. The sequence, the plane sequence where there's a fight on the plane. Well, he walked away and he was going to get some lunch, and all of a sudden he heard this voice saying, Harrison, Harrison. Turned around, he goes, you're not Harrison. He goes, I know, I'm Victor. He goes, I thought this bloke was Harrison. So the funny thing is he said, Harrison Ford said, yeah, we both look alike. He spent three nights with my wife before he realised. and at one point, this was the funny thing, is one of Harrison's kids, who was a kid at the time, took Vic Armstrong's hand, looked up and looked at it anyway. But there's another funny thing where Harrison Ford and Vic Armstrong were in a pub in London, and he said, and they were both together. And of course, Harrison Ford, he said, look, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, and they said, yeah, you're Harrison Ford, like that. But it's like but that's the thing, is that if you can get a stunt double who looks like it, Bob Simmons, who was it was Martin Grace who doubled for Roger Moore on the actual Bond movies. So, when you look at it, when you look at the key sequences, sometimes you see it and you think, oh, that's different anyway. So,
it can be one of those things, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. So, basically, John Wayne worked on, Yakima Canutt worked on things like Stagecoach, and as I say, he then worked on, let me just go through the list here. I've got a whole load of them here. Sorry about that. Hold on a second. So he worked on things like Swiss Family Robinson, Where Eagles Dare, Ben-Hur, El Cid, Ivanhoe, The Lawless River. Bob Simmons, for example, was actually the James Bond in the gun barrel sequence in From Russia with Love. So when he walked across, the sex thing shooting the gun, so that was that. He also appeared as a stunt coordinator in the likes of You Only Live Twice, Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, The Spy Love Me, The Wild Geese, which I love, great action venture from 1978 with the royalty, Richard Burton, Moore, Hardy Kruger.
Everyone was drunk, including the director.
No, they weren't. No, but I know. But basically, Richard Burton actually became teetotal, because that's what they said to you and Lord. We got to do this right anyway. So Rick Sylvester, I think we told about. He skied off the top of El Capitan in California and descended approximately 914 meters or 3,000 feet by parachute. It was conceived as the world's greatest ski jump. And there were 2 more jumps made in secrecy to avoid arrest by the National Park Services, because he wanted more. Footage. And he also worked in For Your Eyes Only. So the scene where he climbs to that top of that Greek monastery, that's the scene that he doubled for Bond. Okay. No, they go up to that. It's they're pursuing Christatos and stuff. And apparently he helped rescue approximately 40 people trapped in a ski tram in blizzard conditions in 1978. A 17-ton cable that supported the tram had come free and sliced through the tram car and killing several tourists. Oh, blimey. Yeah. And they set up a pulley system. Another name to bring up is Greg Powell, and he's done things like Casino Royale, but he also did things like United 93, and he worked on Fast and Furious 6 and Avengers Age of Ultron. Vic Armstrong, we've already talked about. He actually doubled for Christopher Reeve, and his wife Wendy doubled for Margot Kidder on Superman. And the scene where he gets thrown into the Marlboro truck, and Christopher Reeve wanted to do it. And he said, look, I don't pull us out of a job, But he's worked on things like Last Action Hero. He's worked on Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. He's worked on Red Sonja. That's awful, spin-off of Conan, where Arnie's being, I am Calidor. He worked on Superman 3 and Flash Gordon. Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, which I think we talked about. And as I say, later on, he's worked on the likes of, he worked on The Amazing Spider-Man. He worked on Eddie the Eagle, Jack Ryan, Maze Runner, American Assassin, Mission Impossible 3, Die Another Day, and War of the Worlds. So he did the second unit stuff on War of the Worlds, where the aliens first arrived. But really, really well done like that. And I think, what else have we got here? Hold on a second, let's check. He worked with Thor on worked with Kenneth Branagh on Thor. And he's, as I say, he's worked on, as a stunt double, he worked on Patriot Games, Blade Runner, Flash Gordon, Never Say Never Again. No, so he played like when Connery go in the opening credit sequence when Connery is trying to rescue that girl. That's actually his wife, Wendy, who's tied up. So that just gives you an idea of, and he's won everything. And I actually met him at a screening of Eddie the Eagle, and because when he did You Only Live Twice, he had vertigo, and he said to me, how the hell do you sort of overcome your fear of heights if you got to go up there again? He said, well, repetition.
But he's a stuntman.
Yeah,
and he's got
no,
vertigo.
but that's what he said. If you read his biography,
Right.
And I think we mentioned in a previous podcast, he drove the bus in this climactic Piccadilly Circus sequence in
American Werewolf.
In American Werewolf,
right.
and you can actually see him drive the truck. So that was, and we talked about it in a previous one anyway. So I think we talked about this before, but there's two key tragedies alongside the Rush tragedy. The most notorious one and one of the most famous is the Twilight Zone tragedy, which took place in July the 23rd, 1982, at a place called Indian Dunes. Now, that has been used in cinema for things like The Exterminator. You remember the opening of The Exterminator, the Robert Ginty film?
Yes, I've got it on
and
DVD,
of course,
actually.
and just for information, Arnold was not the first person in the film to say "I'll be back." It was Robert Ginty in The Exterminator.
Oh, okay.
Because he said, "If you're lying, I'll be back." It's actually a log line on the poster. So this is
I've got a fascinating fact. Here we go. My fascinating fact, everyone. Okay, from 1980 to 1990, there were 37 deaths relating to accidents during stunts on films.
What years?
1980 to 1990. 24 of these deaths involved the use of helicopters.
Yeah. Air.
Yeah. There have been 194 serious incidents between 1990 and 2014, and at least 43 deaths.
I wonder if that's why they don't give awards, because they just think most of them are going to have to go to people that have died. Like,
They don't want to highlight. They don't.
they don't have to.
They don't want to show. Like, actually, this is really dangerous.
Can't give it to the person that died.
But what's weird is just going through the list of fatalities. Sorry to interrupt, but it's the amount of it's not just stunt people. It's like crew people. You know what I mean?
right,
It's like
it's
set designers.
I sort of did the list. The interesting thing is okay. So the two examples we're going to talk about again, Dave highlighted it, but the funny thing is, when I'm sure you read that list and you look through it, and it's very simple things. It's like people, people have been forgotten about that. It's like they, somebody had a fall, because you have the mindset of saying, look, it's a movie, people get hurt, stuntmen are designed to get hurt. But Timothy Dawson famously said in '89, he said, look, the idea is to make something look dangerous, but not to do anything that is dangerous. Yeah. There's another story in. There's another story from Vic Armstrong talks about George P. Cosmatos on Escape to Athena. So it's a 1944 thing. It's got Roger Moore. It's one of the Lou Grade stuff. So essentially, it's got Elliot Gould, Telly Savalas, Claudia Cardinale, Stephanie Powers, and they're
architects. They're
a bunch of people. They're like a troupe or something. Anyway, so that it's on a and Roger Moore plays an Austrian officer. Go figure. Cool. But it's a fun movie. It's got a great score by Lalo Schifrin. Gilbert Taylor, who did the cinematography on Star Wars, it was one of his films. He did it between Star Wars and Dracula, I think, of those. But George P. Cosmatos, and this is what Vic Armstrong said, he wanted to do a scene where somebody fell 300 feet onto a tanker head first. So Vic Armstrong said, "You can't do that. You've got to do it in three. You've got to do it in 3 stages." So right. What George P. Cosmatos wanted, he wanted the guy to fall to wear a pith helmet with a spike at the top. And Vic Armstrong said, "Are you crazy? You can't do that. You're going to kill him."
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is, he says, "You'll be sued anyway." So the story goes. He messaged Vic Armstrong. He goes, "I've checked my lawyers. I know my rights. I can do this." And apparently the crew nailed the hat of his to the floor because everybody hated him so much. But this is the thing: is that the whole point of it is that. I mean, I'm doing an MA for writing. I've written this action adventure. The funny thing is, when I think about it now, it's like, well, there's a lot of stuff that will be very physical and be, I'm not sure it may, but that's the thing. When you're writing a story, you're being responsible for the story. But if you're doing something which is an action adventure, when you get to set, or if they do it, you've obviously got to think, well, how are we going to do this? for me, I would listen to the stunt coordinators. Yeah. I'd say, right, we're not going to, because
you delegate.
You can't, I would not be, I'm not going to be one of those, I would never be one of those directors that would say, look, well, let's try it anyway. I say, no.
Yeah.
I would say to the stuntman, I say, look, we'll do this, but you have to be 1,000,000% sure it's going to work. You do it your way. You check everything. You double and triple check everything.
Yeah.
Let's not, it's not worth it. So I'm going to bring up the Twilight Zone tragedy. So this was during the making of Twilight Zone, the movie. Now, you know what the Twilight Zone is. Do you know the series?
Yeah.
So the series essentially is basically it's dark morals, and there's normally a twist at the end. So in the case,
short story anthology,
very good. Loved it. Loved the original '60s thing. George Miller directed, Joe Dante, John Landis, and Steven Spielberg did 4 segments. George Miller actually had the best one, which was Nightmare at 10,000 Feet, which is one which was remade based on the William Shatner one. It's one of the most famous ones. So in this actual this episode basically is Vic Morrow. He's a bigot, and he leaves the bar and he ends up in Nazi Germany. He ends up in Vietnam because he's made all these cases. So in the Vietnam sequence, he was meant to rescue 2 children, and the sequence is actually. You can see, the funny thing is there is footage on the actual internet, which I've seen, which is quite horrific, because you actually see the thing happen, and it was shown to the trial, and it's just awful, because it's all the more shocking when you watch it. So the story goes, all it was there was a helicopter above, and there were explosions going around, and the Vic Morrow and the 2 children were simply meant to go across. He was rescuing them.
So he was holding them through water.
He's going through the water. So essentially what happens is they detonated one of the explosions too early, which actually hit the rotor blade and actually caused it to sort of malfunction. You can see the helicopter go around and it goes boom. And you literally see that the helicopter dragged that. Now, this is upsetting if you don't know it. I'm going to let you know. The 2 children were killed instantly. Vic Morrow was decapitated by the rotor blade. That was the reality, and the thing about it is the more shocking is that the 2 children were actually they were locals. They counteracted. They actually sort of contravened local child labour laws. They were not meant to be there, and Landis and George Folsey Jr., the producer, were charged with manslaughter. Dorsey Wingo, the pilot, was charged with manslaughter.
What had John Landis done? What was his other films?
Well, he did American Werewolf in London.
Oh, that was it, yeah.
And he also did Trading Places, Coming to America. He did Kentucky Fried Movie.
Because there was a big court case afterwards.
There was a major one.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is John Landis and Steven Spielberg produced the film. And Landis is married to Deborah Land Dorman, who did the costume on Raiders of the Lost Ark. So she'd been married to him for years. But Spielberg actually broke off the friendship. He said nobody should ever die on a set. He said that, it's not that. So it actually, what it did was it changed new procedures and safety standards. Whether people learn from it is a different thing, because the problem is the law of averages is something's going to happen, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. So it's always a hard one.
Do you know how he got away with it? Because that was fairly cut and dry. Like there's child labour laws. The guy in the helicopter said like you've got to be careful because these explosions are too close.
But apparently one allegation was that Landis had said get the helicopter to fly lower.
Yeah,
and it's actually if you read the whole,
it's only about 20 feet, if that, away from people.
But what the funny thing is the irony of the other thing as well is another tragedy around the same time was Byron Kennedy, the producer of Mad Max 2. He was flying a helicopter in Australia, and he was going along like a lake, and he skid too close to the water, and actually the ski jumped and the thing hit over, and he was killed.
Say it again. So what happened?
Byron Kennedy was killed in a helicopter accident in 1983.
So there was somebody skiing?
No, he was the skis of a helicopter.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay,
it actued, I think
clipped the water.
Clipped the water, right. And then went over and stuff. It was, of course he, it robbed the industry of, the stuff anyway. But there's a lot. So the interesting thing is you just look at it, and it's. And I mean, there was a whole book on it. There's a book on it you can buy on the internet and stuff like that.
Just of the Twilight Zone.
Of the Twilight Zone tragedy. And it's even reported, there's a book, there's a John Landis book where he talks about it. He said that we can't watch the film without thinking about the tragedy.
Yeah, of course.
Because he was actually riding high at the time because he'd just done the Michael Jackson Thriller video. And, but, you know, I think it's something he has to live with it. And, you know, it's a very tough one. And then the final one I want to talk about, the second one, is the actual Crow tragedy. Again, we talked about Rust earlier. So this was, I'm just sort of going through it. So on March the 31st, 1993, Lee was...
So this is the original Crow film, not the real...
Not the real one.
Yeah.
So Lee was filming a scene where his character Eric is shot after witnessing the beating and rape of his fiancée. Now...
So this is Bruce Lee's son.
Yeah. So what happened was, instead of purchasing commercial dummy cartridges, the film's prop crew, hampered by time and money constraints, created their own by pulling the bullets from live rounds, dumping the power charge, but not the primer.
That
I mean, you could just buy.
Doesn't sound
try and save some money.
So this is just from the Wikipedia ping. So it said. So about witnesses reported about 2 weeks before Lee's death, they saw an unsupervised actor pulling the trigger on the gun while it was loaded with the powerless prime round. Since the primer was still live, it could launch the bullet with enough force to push it out of the case and wedge it in the barrel. Now, the fatal scene was the dummy cartridges were exchanged for blank rounds, but they didn't check the guns. And they didn't check the barrel for obstructions when time came to load it with the blank round. So, of course, if you look at the situation about the Rust situation, so the bullet from the dummy round was already trapped in the barrel, known as a squib load. This caused the 44 Magnum bullet to fire out of the barrel with virtually the same force as if the barrel had been loaded with a live round, and it struck Lee in the abdomen, mortally wounding him. When he went down, people were a bit worried because they didn't see him get up. And then all of a sudden, it's like, you know, I mean, it was, Paramount Pictures opted out of involvement. This is what they're just saying. And Miramax picked it up, you know, taking the budget. They injected a further $8 million to the budget and stuff. They took a break from script rewrites to do the flashback scenes. And I think they cleverly did sequences with Brandon Lee, so they were able to complete it. And it's a little kind of tragedy because he'd done two great movies before then. They did a movie called Rapid Fire, which is a really great, which I saw, which is really cool, where he plays a college student. There's really terrific action in it. It's a nice B movie. And he did a thing with Dolph Lundgren called Showdown in Little Tokyo.
Nice.
And I mean, unfortunately, whether or not it is the curse of, whether or not it is the curse of the curse. But I love watching stunts. I mean, stunts are genuinely interesting from a point of view. I mean, watching the Mission Impossible stuff is absolutely fantastic. You know, I mean, the fact that Cruise keeps pushing things to the limits because he wants to make films. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see whether the latest one will be the... I
don't know where he gets insurance to do that, though, because that must be crippling the insurance, because if anything happens to him,
but
that's the film gone.
But when you think about it, I mean, people have been saying that they're worried that he's going to... that he might die on a set because he's always pushing... Because he's in his 60s now.
Right, yeah.
But isn't he like level 3 in Scientology or something? He's supposed to be able to like... have telepathy,
right.
Levitation powers.
Maybe he believes that he can't
Reiki
die.
healing stuff. So like effectively he has like Jedi powers.
Right, yeah.
So I think in his mind he's just like, yeah, it's fine, I'll just use my Jedi sprint speed.
Right, yeah, maybe he just does see himself as...
I use my Jedi mind tricks to trick everyone.
But Harrison Ford points out, he said on occasion, he says, look, I don't do stunts. He does physical action. So what he will do is, if you watch him, I watched him in Air Force One at one point. He was talking about getting the money shot. So there's a scene where he talked about when you're choreographing the sequence, what you're doing is you sort of have like, well, we're going to put the hand there, for example. And Michael Douglas was talking about, you know, the strangulation scene in Fatal Attraction. And he said, what you actually do is it's actually in the hand. So you put your hands there, but what you do is you actually resist it. So it's like you put like that, but you're not. You, there's no here. But what you're doing is it's the guys like that. And I learnt in acting what it is when there's 3 rules to acting. You first of all you have to let people know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So for example, there's a thing like you actually. So for example, you actually coordinate it. And I think if you saw, there's a scene on Graham Stallone was talking about the famous punching thing with the water coming out of the mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And he said that what you do is, and if you watch it, what he says, what you got to do is you put a bunch of water in your mouth and you cough. So that's what, like the scene where they do the slow motion things and the water comes out. But he says that's what you do, you cough. Oh, okay. And you actually, what they did was, if you watch the sequence when Stallone punches, playfully, you actually see the slow motion, and they did it to the music from Calavera Rusticana from Raging Bull. And it's quite funny because you watch him and he does this really great thing and you see it. And it's like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that's a very clever little. It's great. Effect.
He did get hurt in Rocky IV, didn't he? When Dolph Lundgren punched him in the chest.
I mean,
and Dolph Lundgren was like a world champion kickboxer, and he went, "No, go and lay it on me." And he said he shifted his heart, so I thought he was going to die.
But that's the thing. It's like that's what there's a lot of there is a lot of kind of machismo competition, like Steven Seagal, for example. Again, he literally went
the most actiony of all action.
I'm assuming this was in the past.
But the thing is, when you see some of his stuff in the movies, I mean, he developed this reputation for being a little too rough and tumble with the actors. When you watch, and I was watching a clip that he did he did a like a demonstration, and there's a sequence like one of those mini clips, and the usual thing in the thing where he's kind of.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Seagal, if you're watching, I don't want to take you on. I'm just pointing out that there's this clip, and I think
I definitely do. I reckon I could have Steve. I reckon I could
now,
have 2-year-old Steve.
I will let you.
I will be your first.
Remember the hospital. No, but the funny thing is, you watch the actual physicality of it, and I mean, I did kickboxing, and the fact that you can, there's certain areas. So when you twist something. And you twist your arm, it's like, and that's the thing, you can bend somebody to you. Well, if you know where to hit, there's different elements there's elements, I think, dim mat. There's a thing which my friend Athos Antoniadis, who's a karate expert, he said there's things like the dim mak, like the energy levels. So there's like, I think they say there's this area here is an energy level. That's an energy level.
That's the front neck.
Front nail. There's that energy level there. That's
the groinal area.
Thank God the table's there.
There's different areas where, and of course here, these areas there.
Palms.
No, the actual that area there. Those the actual things there. So it's always to be very cautious. And there was a famous story where Steven Seagal was taunting a few stuntmen. And Steven Seagal goes, I'm the greatest stuntman ever, greatest fighter ever. And then this guy called Gene LaBelle said, hang on a minute, you can't talk like that. And he did a thing called the rubber chicken, which causes him to be like limp poultry. So he actually got him in that strangle. He sort of went down. So Seagal did not do that. I mean, I will always go over sequences, some of the old Bond stuff like The Living Daylights. There's a speed chase down in Gibraltar, which is phenomenal. Guy riding on the top of the car and it's driving down at speed. Die Hard, for example, the leap off the building and Alan Rickman's death and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
The fact that they only had one night to shoot the helicopters, because they had to get as many cameras, and then the local LA thing said they couldn't shoot it, but they actually got one night and did the whole thing.
Forget helicopters. There's too many. That's like air pressure you're dealing with, mechanics. If it goes wrong, it just doesn't glide. It just drops. And you've got a blade on top spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. So it's just not worth the bloody risk.
Yeah.
Can we change it for a plane instead of a helicopter?
Well, just maybe CG that.
Yeah, just CG the blades go 1,000.
Yeah.
There's literally a mincing machine above your head.
Yeah. But it's like, there's things, but the thing about it is it sort of makes everything good, like the Apocalypse Now, for example, the actual helicopter attack on the village. When you watch that, it's like,
oh, that's insane.
The Ride of the Valkyries, and you look at the dynamic of that. The camera, there's about 15 helicopters driving, and there's explosions, there's things, and you've got Ride of the Valkyries, but the when you look at it, there's so much stuff going on. The actual, the fact that they're shooting, the cameras are moving. It's in camera. It's in
one of the best action scenes I think ever. Like that, it really, really is. I mean, the choreography and just the amount of time. It must have taken months. I think about that. It must have taken months to film that. And also, a little fascinating fact: it's very reminiscent. There is a Nazi, literal Nazi propaganda. Wartime propaganda thing, and it's about a bombing run, and they take off in Berlin and they bomb London and fly back, and it's done to Ride of the Valkyries, and it's very reminiscent. The opening section, the way it's shot, very reminiscent to that. So it's sort of interesting because they allude to a Nazi propaganda movie in this attack on a Vietnam village.
But I mean, there's other things like on the climax of Mission Impossible where he's on that wind tunnel, the actual train, and it's going at speed. And he's on the back of it, and it's we talked about when you look at like Face Off, some of the stuff in that. There's a lot of gunplay and stuff. And the boat is literally speeding along. You look at it, and they're going, and then it suddenly hits something, and it blows into, And then there's that speed chase in World Is Not Enough. The cigar girl. When the two boats on the Thames. Oh. That was filmed on the Thames, and the actual boat goes through it. The climax of Rumble in the Bronx with the hovercraft going along in the thing, that's quite fun.
But that's the thing, is there's an artistry to the practical effects, and it's a shame. And we sort of mentioned the sort of Marvel movie, well, the superhero movies, and the reliance on CG. That's great, that's fine, but there is less of that kind of. When I watch sort of older movies, I'm like, wow, how did they do that? That's incredible. Like, what? It makes you sort of think, that's really clever. What,
No, they just threw somebody off
They didn't have any regard.
Yeah. That's literally just the person being thrown off a building.
That's what I'm saying, but there is more of an artistry to it. And just trying to figure out how they did that. Like the American Werewolf in London. That scene, that in camera, scene is just incredible. You can watch that all day, just like looking for the cuts, looking to see how they did it.
But the thing is, I mean, the helicopter rescue in Superman is a really terrific blend of CGI. Remember, there was no CGI in '78, but the thing is they use clever matte shots, so they cover it. But the thing is, you get like when Christopher Reeve is flying, that was the point. His physicality of actually leaping up and grabbing that, and then of course you get the helicopter coming down, crashing down, and he grabs the helicopter and still while holding Lois Lane with the other, brings the camera down. You see the miniatures and stuff, and then it cuts. But it's also knowing when to cut to the reality, so that you don't see. So at the beginning of Octopussy, there's a sequence where it's set in Colombia, and they're sort of trying to get this bomb doing. They're trying to blow up this plane or something. And Bond escapes, and he's in this. He sort of emerges from this horse carriage in a plane that sort of flames go down, and he flies out. So he's approaching this hangar, and he's being pursued by this rocket, which is a heat-seeking rocket, and he basically flies into the hangar and flies out again. It's cleverly done, but what they did was they mounted like a gimbal on the actual thing, so it's actually physically on the ground, but you don't see it. It's going at speed, but you actually see the physical. In like pictures I've seen that they have a physical gimbal which actually is being pulled along, and then it cuts to a miniature flying out, and then the thing flies in, an explosion and stuff. But that's the thing. It's like you don't, sometimes they have that special device that sort of flips a car. There's a special. Hydraulic, so
it fires down.
Pumps up. But you don't normally. What you have to do with that is you cut. What you do is you then. So, say for example, you're in the street and you're shooting something. What you do is you go boom, but then you cut just after the thing is mounted. You have to know when to cut that bit out. You're cutting out the process.
Yes, yeah.
But what you're doing is you're maintaining the intention. It's like, for example, if you take Die Hard, for example, why those sequences are quite when you watch the coordinated actions. So, for example, the scene in the computer terminal where he's battling, Carl and stuff, and it's just after there's the false thing, and he's sort of him and Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman have done it, and then he runs off, and there's all that glass. The reality is you see why that makes it work so well is the fact is the subtlety of editing. so you can get the kneecaps. We're following the flow of it. I think we should talk about editing in a future podcast because it'd be interesting to chat about that element. But this is the thing.
Something that can ruin a film. Like
Yeah.
you've seen a thing that's not or oddly edited or edited. It just even hanging on the scene for like a second
Something
or two
scared
long.
me. It was about 6 months ago. I listened to the making of Planes, Trains and Automobile, you know, that film. And they said, I think it was 4 weeks when they did the release to show the film tanked. Everyone hated it because everyone was saying, oh, well, he's a drifter. He's just pouncing off this guy that he's with. He's supposed to be a nicer character. Yeah. They literally changed one word. It was to do with the, you know, when he's going away, he's leaving him at the train station. He starts thinking about scenes with him and John Candy. They had to change something specifically that was said. And that one sentence, they went back and changed it. And then it became like the film it became. Okay. But they said it was literally it went from people hated the film to they changed one sentence and it made him not that type of person. Yeah, sympathetic. Yeah.
But the other thing as well, if you look at Titanic, if you look at the iceberg collision, for example, it's a wonderful mix of CGI and stuff. But again, it's based on the reactions and it's also based on the interaction. So you always focus on the characters. You focus on the human elements. That's what makes it all more things. If you take, for example, the skateboard chase in Back to the Future. Now, the scene just before, that's the other thing. The scene, what it is Michael J. Fox is sort of on the front of it and he's on the skateboard. Then all of a sudden they're going towards that manure thing and then literally he leaps through the car, goes down, lands on it, and then the car goes in there. And everybody, and I remember the first screening I went to, everybody cheered and clapped. Because again, that's the thing, because you're thinking, how is he going to get out of it? How is he going to get out of it? But it's the subtlety of the editing and it's the subtlety of the reactions of the characters and stuff. That's why I think with something like Die Hard, why it's enjoyed so much is because you're buying into the humanity and the fact that, you know, when he leaps off that building at the end and he's sort of, you know, he's kind of sort of going, and then he leaps back and shoots the glass. It's a spectacular thing, but you remember, it's physical. There's physical glass. It's the Fox Plaza. Then they've got like little things. So Richard Edlund's effects are incorporated, but I think that's the problem. Sometimes Christopher Nolan, I think, has recognized that now because he knows the importance of in-camera stuff. So when you look at The Dark Knight Rises, for example, the opening plane, that's another impressive thing. The opening sequence of Dark Knight Rises, it's actually where Bane is being rescued by his cohorts in the plane, and then
bigger than you.
Yeah, but the plane, you know,
breaks in half,
and it breaks in half,
and the
then
fall off
and then they blow the top
Yeah.
off, and then all of a sudden there's a wonderful sequence where, you know, he grabs Dr. Pavel, and then he just punches it, and then literally you're looking down from above, and you see the casing go down, and that's actually in camera. So you have to always remember that when you're watching it, you sort of look for the subtleties of the dynamic of when somebody's doing action. But also, I think that's the thing I think is great about it, is the fact that, you know, what we've talked about today is actually more respect for what the stunt people do, you know, the stunt coordinators and the people who are, I mean, their jobs in a way are threatened because of AI. You know, the fact that, you know, there's a lot of worry at the moment, and this is why the actors' strike happened, is because the stunt coordinators, you know, are they relevant? Of course they are. You know, we still need, I mean, Christopher Nolan's doing The Odyssey next, so that's going to be interesting to see what the...
okay, interesting.
You know, I mean...
I think with like gunshots, surely you could CGI the gunshot. I mean, that's just a noise.
No, they can do...
Why do it any other way?
Well, the thing about it is what they have is when you watch the movies, what they do, they have flashing. So the guns flash. In Star Wars, for example, they had a gun that fired a flash that actually made a bit of flame. Then they animated the laser bolts afterwards, and then they put squibs in the thing. So what they will do is they will. So for example, you've got like they have a special thing. So if you take, I don't know, if you look at this wall behind it, say for example somebody's shooting there like that, they have something here where they've actually put squibs in the thing. So for example, someone goes boom, 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 and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You don't hear the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but you actually see it, and then they'll cut that in there. So because that will all that will be is just like an insert shot, you know. And then of course they might bring what they'll also do is they might bring the actor in and say, look, but they will coordinate that and say, look, so as long as he's sort of down under the table, but it makes for a really cool visual shot. And then, of course, they have. I mean, here's the thing. I did a. One day, I went to a. They did a demonstration. Like these blood squids. Mm. And what they do is they attach it, and what it is, and now it's perfectly harmless, but it's like a little thing that sort of comes out, and then you simulate it, but it doesn't feel anything. All it is they sort of attach like a cable, and they put like the squib there, and then it's actually they press a button, and it goes boom.
It must just be air pumped.
Yeah, it just pumps it and explodes. But the funny thing is, you actually see the physical thing of the blood and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's
was most Paul Verhoeven films, which is RoboCop, Total Recall. Just people just exploding all over the place.
But that was also based on his influence by his experience in World War II, because he experienced things. I mean, Tom Savini, for example, was influenced by working as a combat photographer in Vietnam. Mm. And he
saw them for real,
because he saw them for real, and that's the thing. If you can have that real life experience, that will help it. And I think at the moment, it'd be interesting to see what they do with the James Bond saga now that Amazon have bought it. But I think there's a lot of resistance at the moment because Amazon will what are they going to do with it? I doubt they're going to stick to like just one film every
Oh no, of course not. They're going to run into the ground like they have done with all these big franchises.
It just becomes boring.
Well, they'll make a TV series, a prequel series, a spin-off TV series, a film, a thing, a spin-off series, a prequel series, prequel film, and it just run.
The name would just be water.
Yeah. And like a kid's young James Bond, James Bond, younger James Bond.
Well, they've done the animate. I mean, Eon did the James Bond Jr. animated series back in the day.
But I know there's lots of books, and they're supposed to be reasonably, for young adults, and they're supposed to be reasonably well liked and stuff. And Charlie Higgins wrote a few, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Charlie Higgson,
Higgson,
so have you got any more on stunts that you done? You done the stunt? Any more on your paperwork?
No, that's it.
Did you have any more on your little booklet there? Oh, you just had the one wiki.
That was
entrance.
The deaths. I was just going through. There's an awful thing. Yeah,
that's a lot of deaths you didn't hear about.
I'm scrolling. This is still just 90. Okay, we're up to there. But
I was listening to the making of Aliens, and the stunt guy got sacked off of that because when Sigourney Weaver fires the flamethrower, they had to do this thing where it hit a mirror and the mirror would scatter it, but it came straight back at her. And he sacked the stunt guy right there on the spot because the thing nearly blew a bloody wig off. Yeah. By wig, I mean just a head. Not
Okay, no, I do have a good fact.
Oh, yeah.
Fascinating fact. This is from Wikipedia, so it must be true. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator 2, when he's holding the lever action rifle and he's spinning it around, reloading.
Hold his finger,
yeah, he's on the motorbike. Looks cool. John Wayne. A reference to John Wayne in Thingy. That film with John Wayne in.
So it's when he's got a rifle and he's loading it with one hand and flicking
Apparently
it around.
They had to specially design, they had to have a bigger hand thing because his fingers were too big to fit in the normal thing, so he couldn't do it.
Right, yeah.
So they had to specially modify it, and he apparently picked up a normal one and did it, and then he broke his fingers.
Oh, it's just too wasn't designed.
They were too muscly.
Supplied
they had too much finger.
You're not supposed to load a rifle with one hand, just flicking it around.
Just flick it around, yeah.
But that's the thing. When I watch that, I think it's it's a cool effect. But it again, if you sort of analyse it, you think, well, can you do that?
Yeah, a whole rifle being flung. No, it's a shotgun.
I think it's a lever action rifle.
Right. Okay. Right.
But it's bad power thing. Yeah.
There's two bits of films. I can't remember the other one, but I know where there's an accident that sort of things go wrong, but they keep it in the film.
Lots of stuff. Like reading the list. It's horrible.
The one I saw, because I looked it up, I thought that doesn't. There's a bit at the beginning of Jaws when the girl gets pulled under the water. And she's screaming. So the idea is she's swimming at night and then she gets bitten by a shark. But what it is, there's two people under the water and they have to pull her down. And they pulled her down too quick and she didn't take a breath. So when they pulled her down, she took a gulp of water when she went down and she came up and she's screaming. And then they pull her back down again and she's trying to tell them that she can't breathe because she's taking...
You do know who...
And they left it in there.
You know who one of the people was?
Who?
Spielberg.
Oh, the director.
Spielberg.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
but when you watch it now, it's bad because you go, oh, yeah, that's not acting. She's going, please.
But of course, the other thing is William the famous one with Linda Blair and William Friedkin, Linda Blair on the bed.
They messed her back up.
William Friedkin, what he did, he said, yank her. And apparently the actual
The brace.
The brace was actually a bit too weak, and basically, and he said, when you hear Lindbergh goes, make him stop.
Yeah.
So it's like the
because she's doing this back in the bed, and the brace wasn't on, and you see her basically flicking back, and she does say, "Make him stop, make him stop."
But of course, there's a fun blooper which is in. Actually, there's a very funny blooper I encountered, which is slightly unrelated, but in Raiders of the Lost Ark, just after Marion seemingly is killed in the truck, where Indy's having the drink with the monkey. If you look to the left of it in, Egypt 1936, you can see somebody wearing a modern day T-shirt. But the other one is what was I going to say? In Star Wars, where they discover C-3PO and R2-D2 in the control room.
Third stormtrooper on the left. Or whatever.
If you watch on the right, if you watch when the door lifts up, you actually see somebody go, and you actually see the stormtrooper bash his head on the thing, and then the guy, and you see the guy say, "I'll see to him,"
Oh, right.
So that was.
But why do they leave that in? Or just time?
It was
just do it again.
but I mean, at the time, if you remember, Star Wars was under a lot of they were under a lot of pressure because it was the studio and stuff. So it's one of those things that kept in. I mean, the other famous one in Die Hard is the fact that at the end of it, there's a special truck which is meant to be in the actual big truck. There's an ambulance which is in the truck, and of course, when they all emerge to take over the building, they look in there, and John McTiernan said, "Stop! Stop! Stop! There's no ambulance in the car." So, but we forget because they. Again, going back to what we were talking earlier, when they cut it subtly, you don't think about it. You're just going in there. But, the problem is now is because people are more savvy in spotting things, because people are dedicating YouTubes to, these visual bloopers.
Yeah. And a lot better quality screens. I mean, back in the day, we were watching this stuff on a rubbishy thing on a VHS.
Can't really make out what that pixel.
But nowadays you really can see all the little
zoom
bits,
in.
It's like pan and scan. I mean, the thing is, that's the other thing. We didn't see it in the earlier versions because it was pan and scan.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember a stuntman saying about appreciating stuntmen. He said, "Go outside onto the concrete on the road." He said, "Just fall over." I said, "You'll hurt yourself. Just stand up and fall over." Yeah. I said, "That hurts." Right, so anything else going on in the film world, John?
I actually stayed up and watched the Oscars the other day.
Oh, right, yeah, give us a report. What happened on them?
Wasn't
there a speech? What was his name? Who's the guy in Predators that did the speech? Adrian Brody. What did he do? He's a bit sick of
first of all, he chucked his gun at his girlfriend Georgina Chapman.
Chucked his what?
He chucked his gum.
Gun
at Georgina Chapman.
Chucked his what?
Gum.
What do you mean?
Chewing gum.
Chewing gum.
Yeah. So
what do you mean he chucked his chewing gum?
If you watch the scene, he comes onto stage, and then just before he gets on stage, he takes his gum out and throws it.
For God's sake, just trash.
But then but the problem was he sort of gave an elevated sense of entitlement. He sort of did this incredible speech, and then he spoke for about 6 minutes.
Jesus.
Didn't they just they usually just turn the music
up? No, but Adrian Brody turned around and he said, "Oh, can you stop the music? I've still got to talk."
Oh, what a prick.
I mean, I
was he talking about sort of anything important? Or was it just about
it was meant to be. I mean, for example, that somebody else was talking. I mean, somebody made a speech about Palestine and stuff.
God.
But however, the best speech was actually made by Sean Baker, who won Best Director, and he actually championed the fact that he said we've got to get the theatrical experience back.
Yeah,
because he said make your movies for the theatre.
Yeah.
What was Adrian Brody going on about?
Well, it's political.
It's politics. What did he win?
He won the Best Actor for The Brutalist, which I wasn't a great fan of.
But he actually said, "Turn the music off." I'm still talking.
No, he said, "Look, can you stop? Don't turn the music down because I'm saying something." And then he just went on and on and on. And when I sort of
Big Hook comes out and they just
Big Hook just put him off the stage.
I actually muted his speech because it was like, for example, the people in the. Like Jonathan Ross and Co. when they were doing like the things between the ab breaks in America, I just thought, and the truth is the consensus, everybody said, look, we don't care, we just want to watch the Oscars. I mean, if I did the Oscars, if I hosted that a ceremony, what I would do is say I'd do a pre-show preparation. Say, we'll see you at the end. We'll do a bit like football. You say, look, we're going to watch the ceremony now, and we'll see you at the end for a quick roundup. Half an hour, done. Let people, because the truth is, who on earth is nobody cares at 1 o'clock in the morning. The people who genuinely care are film geeks like me. but we don't want to listen to.
I thought they'd have to hand their speech in or something like that to okay it, just in case. Well, they might start.
No,
doing that.
I mean they've been very cautious because the after the La La Land mix up, and then of course you've got the Will Smith slap that happens.
Yes.
What's happened to Will Smith since? Has he gone off
Well,
the radar?
essentially, I mean, he's sort of desperately trying to salvage his career, but it's like, the thing about it is what he should have done was he should have taken the gripe about Jada Pinkett Smith on the chin, accepted his award, and sort of done something and say Black Lives Matter. It's fine, you do that,
But they still gave him the award after he punched somebody on the bloody stage.
It was
such a low point in the Oscars.
But it was just. I'm sorry. It was just nasty. You don't slap anybody on stage
at the Oscars.
At the Oscars in front of billions. Even he said he admitted that he lost it. Anything else happening? Well,
what have you been doing? Yeah, go on.
Well, I went to the Romford Horror Festival last weekend, 2 weeks ago. Which was a great event. It was set at the Lumiere Cinema Romford, which is the former Premier Cinemas Romford. They've now taken over the lease. It's now reactivated as a thing. It's near Romford Station. Great cinema, 8 screens. Oh. And I had the pleasure of meeting Francesca Sciardi, who was the lead actress in Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh, okay.
from
And
the 70s?
From 80.
Oh, 80.
Which, of course, and I told her about, I actually said to her when I met her that it was one of my top 10 films. I met Ian McCulloch, who was in the 70s series Survivors. It's an old thing from 1975, but he wrote one of the episodes, but it's about a bunch of people in a post-apocalyptic Britain. And he was there for us. He did Zombie Flesh Eaters and all that. They had a Lucio Fulci day.
Oh, cool, yeah.
There was somebody, a stormtrooper, but there was there was a great Popeye horror thing called Shiver Me Timbers. So it's basically set in America. So it's essentially this mutation of a Popeye. Who basically a little piece of meteor, which is only like a speck, gets into his pipe and infects him, and then he becomes like Jason and Victor Crowley. It's I'm doing the MA. I'm sort of I'm doing some writing and stuff.
You got a new website.
My website, whatmovie.co.uk, is now up and running. So
and what are you going to be doing on there?
Well, it'll be reviews and articles,
videos.
It's open for business. We'll. There's a fee there's a little charge to have reviews now anyway, which is about £40, £45. So we're doing that, and that's promoting.
You have to see any films this week, next couple of weeks? Any decent films coming out?
Nothing at the moment. I mean, I think I might be seeing Mickey 17, the new Bong Joon-ho film, with Robert Pattinson, which is a weird kind of science fiction thing.
Is that the one where he keeps dying or something?
Something like that.
Clones.
It's a bit. I reckon it's a bit like Edge of Tomorrow, but I'll find.
Or like Moon.
Moon, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, you're right, yeah.
I like that stuff.
Right, well, that's lovely. So you're going to keep an eye on anything 28 Days Later related?
Yes, I will.
Let me know.
Sure, I will.
I don't want to miss anything.
Well, as I'm known according to Chris Jones as the super networker, I will do my best. Theo.
Fantastic. Well, we'll have you back on in a few months with an unknown topic, but something of interest. So we'll leave you that.
Figure it out.
And that's the show. So thank you to Cure Water, Oxygenated Water, for sponsoring the show, and we will be back next week. Won't we, Karam? See you next week.
Bye.
Love me or hate me, God knows you made it when he let his eyes on me. 여기 네 눈이 날 바라보는 눈빛이 이미 다 말해줘. No, I ain't gonna let anyone keep me down. No, you just gotta keep up 'cause I ain't gonna go down. No, everyone just wanna to get to know ya. 이미 시작된 걸. Do you think I'm sweet? I'm sweet, so sweet. You got stung by a honeybee. You just wait and see. Do you think I'm sweet? I'm sweet, so sweet. 둘이 kissing 없을 거야. 아마도 그럴 거야. Do you think I'm sweet? I'm sweet, so sweet. You got stung by a honeybee. You just wait and see. Do you think I'm sweet? I'm sweet, so sweet. 둘이 kissing 없을 거야. 아마도 그럴 거야. Do you think I'm sweet? I'm sweet, so sweet. Yeah. Baby, I'm so sweet. Oh, you got stuff.